have to admit I was really mad at Jeff when he coerced me to speak today, when I realized it was the Sunday after the election. Only kidding. But then I realized what was on my plate, and I said, oh my God, what have I signed up for? I was trying to figure out how to get out of this. Can I fake a cough or get a fever or something? But I'm glad to be here because it helped me kind of process so much of what I know so many people are feeling. And hopefully I will not offend anyone's sensibilities here. I usually don't delve into politics and from the pulpit, but brace yourselves. So here we go. So religious ideology and imagery has played a significant role in the shaping of our current political landscape. And this past Thursday, I read something from a former Franciscan community member of mine that really just got under my skin and made me really angry. He quoted something to the effect, if the donkey or the elephant let you down, remember that Jesus the Lamb is still king. For some reason, it just rubbed me the wrong way. There's so much wrong with that statement at so many levels. The metaphor that religious people are sheep, even in spite of the fact that we just sang about that, are sheep that need to be led, and that sheep are pretty dumb to begin with and need a superior shepherd who, by the way, works for the king, who controls everything in our thought and economy and behavior and truth. So much of that language has infiltrated our society. I remember as a young parish priest in 1981, I had a lot less weight and a lot darker hair then, in a discussion with our parishioners about forming a Christian conscience and acting out of their own understanding of the gospel. And one of the parishioners in this group, or a couple of the parishioners in the group that I was leading, told me that they did not want to think for themselves, that they wanted to be told what to do so they could get into heaven. And as a 26, 27-year-old, I just could not believe that. It just kind of blew me away. And, now the messaging has been, vote according to biblical values, until it comes to welcoming the immigrant and helping the poor and feeding the hungry and bringing health care to folks, laying down our arms and loving our neighbors. So I've been really mad and sad and disappointed in the outcome of the election. I think so many of us have. The electorate chose a diagnosable, malignant narcissist who is a convicted felon, sex offender, a misogynist, racist, homophobe, et cetera, et cetera. I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on, but that kind of person should not be sitting in that office, period. Everything I've been taught to be true and right and just seems to be thrown out under the bus. Yet, here's the bright side, if there is. Despite the outcome of this, our responsibilities as people of the Spirit in this community hasn't changed. In fact, the responsibilities are going to be far more difficult than we could ever imagine. I want to share just 6 statements, brief statements, that could perhaps be the credo of decent people of any faith or no faith or uncertain faith. And I'll even use some scripture to back it up. And I did not read Nick Kristoff's article, by the way, which I commend to all of you until coming in the car this morning. Christine said, did you read Nick Kristoff? I said, no. Well, he stole my sermon. I'm just saying. Not really. He's a much better writer than I am. So the first principle that I thought might be valuable is every person matters. Just be a good neighbor, right? Some people are angry or worried and despondent about the election. I'm certainly one of them. Others are celebrating. But it's important that we continue to listen deeply to the fears and hopes of each other and those who have maybe acted in a way that's opposite to our way of thinking. And why is this important? Because in Genesis, the writer tells us that every person is created with divine integrity. Remember the words? Then God said, let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish, etc., etc. So God created humankind in her image, in the image of God. He created them, male and female, he created them. This also means that we have to treat each other with respect, stand alongside and defend those who are being targeted or bullied, and comfort those who are hurting. Second principle, work together to create a safe place, to create and maintain a safe place for ourselves and others. Because our nation is deeply divided, intimidation and threats of violence are ongoing and will continue in different ways. This could escalate, maybe not, maybe yes. but it can be frightening. And why is this mandate so important? Because safety is paramount for everybody, right? As is telling the truth, in resolving differences peacefully and protecting the vulnerable. And Mark says in the second commandment, in Mark's gospel, the second commandment is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There's no commandment greater than this. And as people of the Spirit, this has to be our message as well. So when we encourage nonviolence, even as people express their anger, we are doing our part to keep people safe. Compassion is the antithesis of political violence. So how do we do this? I'd like to offer some practical advice here. I don't want to keep it up in the clouds. So look for organizations who serve those in our community, in your community, whose lives are invisible or deliberately disregarded as other. You're already doing this. Just kind of open your eyes, see what's out there, who can benefit from the energy and love that this community has, and just do more of it. The third principle, that words matter. What we say, what comes out of our mouth is important. During this past election and the days leading up to it, some leaders have said really mean and hurtful things. It's astounding to me. Words that have been used to insult and bully certain individuals and groups, and also have incited violence. And because of this, we, as people of the Spirit, need to be especially aware of what we say. We need to ask ourselves some important questions. What's the impact of our words? How do we make sure that we're speaking the truth? How do we ensure that we're not repeating rumors or lies? And how do we make sure our words are always loving? And why is this important? Again, I go back to Exodus, the first commandment, or one of the commandments. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Pretty basic stuff. We learned it when we were this big, right? And Paul in Ephesians tells us to say things that are only say things that are helpful and build up others. He writes, Paul does, let no evil talk come out of your mouths, but only what is useful for building up as there is need, so that your words may give grace to those who hear. And all of this is to say that we need to use our words constructively. If we represent the Spirit as we say we do, then our words and actions need to reflect compassion and integrity. So, we've been told this, all politics is local, right? Look for organizations that you can attend or learn more about the folks that are representing you in your assemblies and Congress and Senate. Learn from them, write to them, say, this is what's on my mind. They represent us. Let our voices be heard. Become informed by organizations like the ACLU or other organizations like that to what's happening to vulnerable populations in our community, and do our best to support those organizations, either financially or by writing letters or just getting on the phone or just praying for them, but to make ourselves aware of what the truth really is. The fourth thing, finally, is the election has brought out the worst in some folks, but it's also brought out the best in others. And during the election season, people came together to encourage each other while voting. My son worked for the campaign to re-elect Andy Kim in New Jersey. And very late in the evening on Tuesday, he brought chairs and water and coats to folks who were standing out for hours in line to vote. So those are the kind of concrete things to help folks that were there. And why is this important that we acknowledge this kind of activity? Because there's examples throughout Scripture in places like Galatians where Paul writes, by contrast, the fruit of the Spirit is joy and love and peace and patience and kindness and generosity and faithfulness. These words just kind of roll off our lips, right? But that's the essence of who we are. I know this is the essence of who I've come here long enough to be able to say that. I've seen it in action. We've seen it in action. And it also reminds us that people of faith are to have the courage to stand up for our beliefs. Like Paul says in Corinthians, keep alert, stand firm in your faith, be courageous, and be strong. So in this post-election season, we need to continue to be part of God's kindness, to be God's hands and heart and voice in the community. And again, all politics is local. Reach out and support organizations like Covenant House, Moms Demand Action. Get involved with local soup kitchens. God's Help We Deliver, GMHC. use some of the skills that you had in your professions to tutor folks, teach, and help mentor young people who are just kind of coming up through the ranks. So we hit these 4 topics, right? 2 other broad messages that I want to offer to you. Be cautious about unity language. Right? Be cautious about unity language. As much as we desire for there to be unity in our congregations and our communities, be cautious about insisting people come together. It might sound kind of contradictory to what I was just saying. But when folks don't feel safe or when they feel they're under threat or attack, the guards go up. There are people living with the effects of harmful and violent rhetoric, policies undergirded by so many phobias: transphobia, misogyny, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, fear of immigrants, violence and racism and misogyny and white privilege. And the incoming administration has made plans to put policies in place that reflect those beliefs. So encouraging one another and each other to come together with those who have supported harmful policies would be insensitive at best, harmful at worst. Think about the people who expressed fear or distress, regardless of their political position. Reach out and check in with folks. Avoid urging them to engage with those who they feel might be threatening or harmful to them. Stand your ground. We know what the truth is, and it sounds contradictory to what I just said, but we do. The gospel and the scriptures tell us how to act and be in the world, to always speak the truth. Another concept that we have to remember, that this place, coming together every Sunday, is a safe place for us. We have to be rooted in this place with each other and realize that we're not the first people who've undergone political dissension and political trouble. But in church, in this community, we have the rituals and words and songs and actions and music that help bring us to a different place. That's what ritual is supposed to be, to take us to another time and place that while we're still grounded in this moment, that we can see what the future might be able to hold. And I've said before, and I'll say it again, all politics are local. Keep informed however you're able. Support those who will become targets of hate, who already are targets of hate. What can you do as Chelsea Community Church to reach out to the community, continue to reach out to the community, to invite folks into your community, dialogue with them, learn from them, and help support them? I'm almost done. My family loves the West Wing. You know, you might assume that given my speech this morning. But there's an episode, I think in the last season, where Martin Sheen is kind of going out of office, and there's a political dialogue between Jimmy Smits and Alan Alda, Republican and Democrat. And there's a scene where there's a tragedy in Los Angeles, and Matt Santos, who's the candidate of the Democrats, goes to speak at an African-American church after a young African-American boy was shot and killed by a Hispanic police officer. It was a mistaken thing. You know the drill. You know what it sounds like. He's unable to explain away the pain or sweep under the rug the painful reality of racial tension and discrimination and inequality in all stripes of our country. But he knows the power of the word compassion. I really commend this episode to you. It's called The Undecideds. We've seen such scenes played out across our country recently and throughout the years, and it's so easy for us to call each other names, to cast blame on other persons, entrench ourselves in hateful thoughts, and sometimes even to act on them, and at times to sink into despair and hopelessness. It's easy to do that. It's so easy to throw stones at the sinner, at the other person, the one different from us, who holds different views, who believes different things, who lives in a different lifestyle, or worships a God of a different name. Please indulge me as I paraphrase and share a section of the speech that Santos gives to that congregation. He writes, he speaks, "I blame everyone I can think of, and I am filled with rage. And then I try to find compassion. Compassion for the people I blame. Compassion for the people I do not understand. Compassion. It doesn't always work so well. I remember listening on the radio to Dr. King in 1968. He asked of us compassion, and we responded. Not necessarily because we felt it, but because he convinced us that if we could find compassion, if we could express compassion, that if we could just pretend compassion, it would heal us so much more than vengeance could. And he was right, and it did, but not enough. And what we've learned is that more compassion is required of us, and an even greater effort is required of us. I think every one of us is tired. We're tired of understanding. We're tired of waiting. We're tired of trying to figure out what is safe and what is not, and why our efforts to live in freedom as we think freedom and independence should be always seems to fail. We're tired. But we must know that we have made some progress, and blame will only destroy. Blame will breed more violence, and we've had enough of that. And I ask you today to dig down deep with me and find that compassion in your hearts, because it will keep us on the road. And we will walk together and work together, and slowly, too slowly, things will get better. My friends, I invite you to dig deep into your hearts. Look at the talents that you have. Look at the strength of this small community. Reach out to your neighbors in need. Speak the truth. Be a good neighbor. Create unity. Welcome the stranger into your community. And I know that even though it seems not very much, the impact that you have is profound and sacred and compassionate. God bless you all.